app is now in a really great spot. I think that we have wrapped up our login form. It is fully Reduxified. And I'm going to say that, we've probably got a better handle on Redux in general at this point in time. So I think that now we can move on to the next area of the application. Right now we can put an email and password. We can, in theory, sign in. But once a user is signed in, we're not really actually doing anything about it, right? We're not showing the user like a list of employees or giving them the ability to add employees. And so that's what we want to start working on. And so we're going to start working on the realm of navigation with React Native. And I'm going to tell you right now, navigation with React Native is a little bit of a tricky subject. While the React.js world, like React in the browser, and has a de facto standard of navigation with the React router library. So React.js, very clear directions on how to pull off navigation on the web. On the other hand, React Native doesn't really have a very similar go-to solution for navigation. Okay, there's not like a single, just fantastic, community-accepted standard library for all navigation. So we're going to be using one possible solution, right? So this is a possible solution for navigation. Personally, I've looked at many of them. I think this is the best. So I think that we're making a good decision here, but I want you to be aware that there are different solutions for navigation in the React Native world. So the navigation solution we're going to use is a library called, and this is just a crazy town name, React Native Router Flux. Nasty name for a library. Let me just say that right now. Nasty name for a library. I'm going to mostly refer to it as just like our routing library, because just remembering all those 4 words is too much for me. I'm gonna tell you. I gotta tell you. Anyways, getting a little off topic there. Let's install the library, and then we're gonna figure out how it works. So at our command line, we'll npm install -- save, then react router wait, nope. See? It's too long. React-native router flux. And I want a very specific version of this, 3.35.0. So while that installs, let's go ahead and check out a diagram on how this thing works. So I've taken a couple of these screens out of our application. These are from our mockups. And I know that the formatting on these is a little bit weird. It's just how it kind of turned out. I took these screens and I separated them out. On the top, we've got our main authentication screen, like our login form, and that is kind of like this authentication flow. And you can imagine that maybe if we had a really full-featured authentication flow, maybe we'd also have like a sign-up screen over here, and then maybe also like a reset my password or something like that. Below it, I have what I'm currently calling the main flow, which is maybe not the best name, but you kind of get the idea. It is a flow where a user can see their list of employees, and they can tap on an individual employee, and they can look at details about that particular employee as well. And users, they can very freely navigate between these two screens right here, right? Like they can tap on a user, they can tap the back button, and they can toggle between the two very easily. That is the intent anyways. The main flow and the authentication flow, however, this is a little bit more of a very distinct jump between the two, right? Like you have to really put in your email and password, press the login button, and then we, the developer, will direct you over to this employee list of sorts right here. So jumping between these two flows is a little bit more direct, more programmatic, something that we are going to take care of ourselves as the developers. So now our question is, how do we use this navigation library that we just installed to set up for this type of navigation right here? We've got these kind of 2 distinct flows where we can jump between the two, and then the one we can freely go forward and back. How are we going to use this React Router native Flux library to do that? Well, then this routing library has the idea of what is called a scene. A scene. And a scene is how we organize a distinct page that our user can navigate to. A scene is a component that we're going to import from that routing library. So in our application, we have 3 distinct screens: the login screen, a employee list of sorts, an employee create of sorts, where you create an employee. We have 3 screens, and so I'm going to expect to have 3 scene components. So scene 1, scene 2, and scene 3. Each of these scene components that we're going to create match up a component with a key property over here. And the key property kind of describes, hey, what does this show screen? Or what does this screen show backwards? So I'm going to expect that we're going to create 3 scene components, one for each of the distinct screens that we're going to create. All right, one more thing that I want to talk about here. Figuring out how these scenes work with the routing library, I expect that you're going to jump onto it pretty quickly. The most challenging part of this scene API of sorts is just understanding what all the props you can pass to the scene are. So again, we're going to make one scene component for each distinct screen in our application. The scene component has 4 big properties that we're going to really care about, and there's many other properties we can pass this thing, but these are the ones that we're going to use probably 90% of the time in our applications. First off is a key. So we might give it a key of login, which means this is my login screen. The key is very important and is very distinctly different from the keys that we've been working with whenever we made a list of React components. Okay, I want to throw that out there right away. This key is not related to list building, like when we were using map to build up a list. Instead, the key is how we navigate around from screen to screen in our application. So I've got a note up here that says, you call this thingamajig to show the screen. We'll talk more about that, but for right now, I just want you to kind of understand that the key does not have to do with list building. It has to do with how we identify a particular screen. Next is the component. And this one, I bet you can imagine what this one is for. When we make a scene, it represents a singular screen that we want to show in our app, or a single setup of components. So we tell a single scene what component we want it to show. Next, the title property. Now this is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. This React Native Router Flux, there we go, library has a built-in header component for us to use. So we have already made a header. Yes, we made a reusable component, but we're not going to be using that one. We're going to be using the one that is provided by this library. And there's a very good reason for that. And we'll talk about it when we start using the header. For right now, I just want you to understand that we can tell a scene what its title should be. And if we set that title, it'll put that title on the nav bar that is going to be automatically created for us. And again, we will talk a whole bunch about that. Finally, the last prop that I want to talk about is called initial. Initial means, hey, out of all the different scenes I have in my application, when the app first boots up, I want to show this scene in particular. Okay, so for us, we're going to have 3 different scenes, right? We definitely want to show the login screen first. No matter what, pop that thing up, make the person log in. So we will want to tell one scene that is the initial scene to show inside our application. All right, so a lot of talking here. Overall, I feel like this whole router library is really one of those things where it's kind of tough for me to explain with words and diagrams, but once we put some code down on the screen or on the page and see how it really works by writing some code, I think that you're going to get a hold on it really quickly. So let's take a quick break and then start working on some implementation in the next section.